ComiCulture Radio is proud to be sponsored by Anchor FM. Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast. It gives you everything you need right in one place and for free, which you can use right from your phone or your computer. Its creation tools allow you to record and edit your podcast so it sounds great, and they'll even distribute it for you so you can be heard everywhere, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and more. What's more, you can easily make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Now, all you have to do is download the Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started.
Are you ready, kids?
Aye, aye, Captain!
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
My name is Jeff.
I am Iron Man.
Oh, hi, Mark.
Wow.
Mr. Feeney? Mr. Feeney!
I'll follow your soul! I'll follow your soul! I'll follow your soul!
Swallow this.
Hello there.
Loud is not allowed. Now you listen to me, mister. I work for a living. And I mean real work, not writing down gobbledygook.
Say, would you like a chocolate-covered pretzel?
Come on, flip the pickle, Morty. You're not going to regret it. The payoff is huge.
That's what she said.
Welcome to my world, bitch.
And now, ComiCulture Radio, with your host, Kevin Caldwell.
All right, so this is Kevin from ComiCulture Radio. I'm super stoked to be talking with Justin Warner today. Justin is an accomplished chef, cookbook author, fellow nerd, and recurring judge on Guy's Grocery Games, as well as the host of the web series Marvel's Eat the Universe, where Justin creates dishes inspired by our favorite Marvel heroes. Justin was also the winner of the 8th season of Food Network Star on Food Network. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me today.
Yeah, hard to believe I did all that stuff.
Well, this is what I was told, and if it's not true, you can correct me at any time. But, yeah, I'm really stoked about this. So let's go back to the very beginning, your birth. No, but seriously, when and where did your love for cooking come from?
Well, I've always been a huge food enthusiast, really. You know, the main difference that I had growing up versus a lot of other people is that my parents never really inflicted their judgment or likes and dislikes for food on me. If I said, I want to try sushi, they would say, no problem. Even if they didn't like raw fish, even though sushi is really about rice, not raw fish. But, you know, they just were very encouraging of my desire to try new things. And I think that is kind of where it all started. And I just always crave trying something new. And as I get older and older, that's harder and harder to find.
Yeah, absolutely. I've always noticed that the younger kids start trying new things, the easier it will be for them to try new things in the future. But if kids only ate X, Y, and Z as a kid, it'd be really hard to get them to try new foods later in life.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, I'm just very fortunate that I had that sort of upbringing. I mean, neither of my parents were exceptionally good cooks. I was just always really crazy about food. And like one day, I don't know, one time I won the spelling bee, so I got to go to D.C., all expenses, paid trip, whatever, and I had read in the Washington Post a review of a really high-end restaurant with a wall that changed scholars and all this crazy stuff. And I guess I couldn't have been older than the 8th grade, maybe. And sure enough, got to go there. That was my first real fine dining experience. My parents had no problem, you know, shelling out for that, even though it was paid for by the spelling bee. But yeah, they were just like, yeah, go for it. If you want to eat at a high-end restaurant, by all means, do it. That was Michel Richard Citronelle, rest its soul.
That's really awesome that your parents were supportive of that. So what was the path from you learning how to cook to appearing on Food Network Star?
Well, you know, honestly, I was never really a cook. I was always a consumer of foods and a seller of foods. So I started out working in restaurants when I was about 15, and I was both a dishwasher and a busser, and I intentionally was kind of bad at being a dishwasher so that I could spend more time bussing tables. And so I just seem to enjoy that more. You know, you're actually socializing with people versus socializing with the sprayer and the scraps of food. So I started out in what we call the front of house career path. You know, if working in restaurants as a career was an RPG, you know, I went for the mage skill. Didn't need to swing knives or swords or any of that. The mage skill is really just using spells or your charm to get money out of customers and suggesting then that they get more expensive things so you can get better tips. So then I graduated to being a waiter, and that was a pretty intoxicating path. I started waiting tables when I was 18, just when I was legal enough to serve. And then from there, just kept chasing more and more expensive restaurants. Moved to Colorado, worked in a sushi place where I got a lot of Japanese background. And then moved on to some pretty high-end French cuisine in New York. So while I was there, I was dating a girl who was an actress. It was a casting call for a show called 24-Hour Restaurant Battle. And we went on there. Just kind of jokingly, just to see what the casting process was like. And they're like, who's going to cook? Neither of you know how to cook. You're both waiters. And I was like, it can't be that hard. And they're like, you're so cocky, kid. And then I got on the show, and then I won the show. And then the same people ended up casting Food Network star. And in between that time, I got a big head that I knew how to cook. So I just practiced and read and watched video after video. And then just tried to kind of come up with new and exciting ways to prepare and eat food. And then I opened a restaurant, and then Food Network Star called, and then I ended up getting on that show, and then I won that, and then pretty much the rest is history. So realistically, I've only been cooking for about 5 years, 6 maybe.
That's so awesome. So speaking of Food Network Star, your mentor that season was Alton Brown, and with your kind of creative side, he seems like the perfect pairing for you. What was it like to work with such a legend in the food industry from the very beginning?
Well, you know, the best compliment Alton Brown ever gave to me was, look, you got this. I'm going to get out of your way. And I don't necessarily know that I did have it, but when somebody as legendary as Alton Brown says, hey, you got this, that's like a huge B12 shot to your self-esteem. And Food Network Star at the time was like a very closed set, so we didn't have any sort of entertainment. We didn't have any phones. We didn't have even pens and paper to pass notes if there weren't cameras around. So it was really ultimately like kind of a mental test where, you know, I think I got the mentorship that I needed in that he said, I believe in you. And that was pretty much it. You know, he did some minor course correction throughout the season, but ultimately I just kind of went in with the confidence and the understanding that this is mine to win. And it just kind of happened, man. I wish I could say a whole lot more about it, but truly, like, that was the biggest compliment anybody has ever given me. I believe in you.
So is that going to go on Justin Warner's gravestone? I believe in you, Alton Brown.
I don't know about that. I think I just want a 3D printed in marble foie gras donut as my headstone. That was something I kind of came up with on my own, and then that launched my restaurant success and kind of my success as a chef outside of TV. And when that happened, I knew that I could play the game of New York restaurateur, you know, did all my own PR and marketing for that sort of thing. So then I realized, well, hey, I know how to sell things on the internet. And then it became this kind of viral hit. And I was like, wow, I did something. Cool.
Yeah. So besides your obvious passion for cooking, you also have a passion for nerd culture. Where did that stem from for you, and how did you meld that into your cooking?
Well, you know, I grew up in I think a really good generation where like Thundercats and Ninja Turtles and Transformers and all of these kind of, you know, the non-Looney Tunes, the sci-fi based cartoons or fantasy based cartoons were kind of a staple of my diet growing up. And, you know, I think if you grow up, you're watching Transformers, Rock Lords, Thundercats at like the age 3 and up era. Man, like you're definitely already have this nerd culture ingrained in you. And so that was pretty much it. I just kind of kept chasing those things. I got introduced to Star Wars pretty late in life, but I was always a Marvel Comics junkie. My parents were like, well, as long as he's reading, it doesn't matter what he's reading. And, you know, when I was like, I would say 6 or 8, that's probably when I started reading comic books. But they're generally written at, I would say, a preteen level. And my parents were just like thrilled that I would, you know, come up and ask them like, Mom, what is Wendigo? And like they're like, oh, we have to look that up ourselves. I think you're pronouncing it right. And then it turns out it's like some sort of crazy, Canadian Bigfoot type person. Correct me if I'm wrong.
So food has become such an integral part of pop culture in so many ways, with multiple channels being dedicated to just that. Besides the obvious, we literally need the stuff to survive, why do you think we as a society are so enamored with the concept of food and watching it be prepared?
Well, one, it's aspirational. I think everybody wishes they had a skill that they don't have. I mean, think about how much of YouTube is not just selling brands and trailers, but demonstrational. You know, if you don't know how to do something, where do you look on YouTube? Thing two is food is relatively harmless. You know, it's hard to, it'd be like hard to make an R-rated cooking show, short of language and illegal substance use. But that being said, pretty much anybody can get behind food preparation without being offended. It might offend your taste or your sensibility, but it's not going to offend you at like a core level. So I think that's thing one. And then thing two is, man, you said it, everybody eats, we need to eat. But I think everybody always wants to eat better. I think that people just kind of love the idea of trying something, and there's something that's really great about the visual preparation of food that like makes you salivate, makes you eager to try it. I think it's the reason there aren't like recipe podcasts, because you can only describe food so well. People need to see the visual aspect of it. And so I think that's one reason why food media has thrived. If you look at one of the most, I would say, recent developments in the style of food videography, it is what we call hands and pans videos. I'm sure you've seen a tasty video before. We call that style, that top-down presentation, hands and pans. And so it's been pretty unique in that it really kind of minimizes the amount of personality involved in making the food. It really just is trying to showcase how simple it is. Of course, it's not that simple, but it's in this hyper-digestible format to consume it. And so, I think that's, I hope that answers your question, because that was kind of a long answer.
No, absolutely. That's what we're going for here, is we want actual discussions, not just, yes, you're right. So thank you for being so detailed. And going back to your mage thing, if you can stick 5 or 6 more references like that in this, I think will be great. I'll try and give you the opportunity, but we'll see if it comes up naturally. So besides all the reality shows, there are so many scripted shows as well that are dedicated to food, like Bob's Burgers, movies like Ratatouille, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Do we get more enjoyment out of watching these if we don't know how to cook, or if we know how to cook?
Oh, I definitely think it's if you don't know how to cook. It's almost difficult for me to watch food-based movies, Ratatouille aside. But sometimes, you'll see something that is kind of billing itself as food content. And given that I've immersed my life in this, it's very difficult for me to like it. I think the greatest food movie of all time, and as a Japanophile, and I'm sure plenty of your fans and listeners are Japanophiles, the movie Tampopo is far and away, I think, the greatest food movie ever made. It's kind of a deep cut. You definitely have to read subtitles. But I think that no movie since then has truly touched upon the various facets of food. I mean, this thing is just like, you're just gonna like leave with like a different perception of the world and perception of food. It's like the blue pill, or maybe it was the red pill. I don't know. But once you watch that movie, man, it's like you start to see the sides of the coin that you didn't realize existed. So anyway, I think people love watching those movies if they don't know how to cook, because they don't know when the movies are fibbing or when the movies are not technically accurate. One of my favorite scenes in Ratatouille is simply just the shuffle of the kitchen clogs. It's kind of this view of defeat from the rat's eye view. And I wear those clogs to this day. I'm wearing them right now. And so they even paid attention to that detail. And I think that is, something that a lot of people who produce food should pay a little bit more attention to that thing, because authenticity, I think, lies in the details. You have to really have a detailed understanding, because when people are nerds about stuff, they're going to call you out on it. And I'm a nerd about food, so like I said, it's difficult for me to watch a food movie and not get a little bent out of shape.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally Agree. So it seems like characters in these shows, specifically anime, can engorge themselves on enormous amounts of foods with like no repercussions. Goku can like eat an entire restaurant. Naruto can throw back 10 bowls of ramen, no problem. Obviously, these are just shows for entertainment and not totally realistic, but it does say a lot for the kids who want to emulate these characters. Do you think the constantly gorging themselves on the food is setting a bad example?
No, I really don't think it's a bad example. I mean, if you can't distinguish between reality and non-reality, then, you know, I think the problem probably is a lot deeper than the media you're consuming. You should emulate characters in the, character attributes, the things that make them have character. I think that food is not a new thing. You know, I mean, you have Valhalla, right? We'll all dine in Valhalla, right? That's ancient. Feasting is ancient. And feasting after acts of heroism is an ancient thing. You know, with great calorie expenditure comes great consumability. You know, you've got to eat after you've done something heroic or big or energetic. And so, you know, I think that question kind of echoes, you know, a bunch of things floating around the internet these days. Like, oh, video games to blame for violence. Like, come on, man. Like, some of the greatest works of literature and greatest works of art depict violence. But it's not to get people to emulate them. That's for damn sure. You know, I think that's just a problem that we have as a society where, you know, if you really can't separate reality from fantasy, that's a problem. I don't think it's the problem of the creators of the thing. I don't think that emulating, you know, Toriko's ability to slay a mastodon that has self-barbecuing flesh and then eating the whole thing, that we should go out there and do that. I don't think that that's what everyone's saying. I think that, you know, everybody is guilty of unhealthy emulation at times. It's just there are people who go overboard. Sorry, that was
I really love that you brought up the violence of video games because I've played Grand Theft Auto since I was like 10, and I never once thought about going and shooting up a school or something like that. So I think you're right that if there are issues that stem from that, they're deeper than what they're watching on TV.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Like, violent images have been around forever. You know, some of the holiest texts in the world depict the destruction of cities. You know what I mean? Like, destruction and creation are just like two sides of the same coin. They both represent power. And I think when people are feeling like they have no control, no power, they're not recognized, and they try and tip the seesaw the opposite way. You know, it's just, you know, we've always had that kid, you know, on the playground who is a jerk, and you're on the seesaw and you're at the top, and then they just hop off and you come crashing down. You know, that's the kid that probably should not emulate things that they see in violent video games. I think everything ultimately is just a power and control struggle.
All right, so let's go ahead and talk about Guys Grocery Games. You're a recurring judge and sometimes competitor, and it's also known for its really outlandish games. How much in advance do you know about what's going to be happening? Do you know what 3 games are going to be played, or is it random for you as well as a judge?
As a judge, I'm informed of the games, and I'm informed of all of the various whammies that happen. That being said, like, us judges, like, we get that sheet at like 7 in the morning while we're getting like hair and makeup done, and then we get our coffee, and then we start like checking our emails and functioning, and then at about like 10:30, 11, that's when the show starts, and like we've forgotten by that point, you know. Sure, we're briefed on it, but if when you see the shock in our face at the games, it's real. It's because we forgot, or we weren't paying attention, or we didn't have our coffee yet, or something like that. As a competitor, though, you are in the dark. I can't stress this enough. People think like these shows are manufactured. Manufacturing human emotion doesn't exist. You know, there's the reason they're called unscripted. Otherwise, they'd hire actors, and it would not be a game show. It would be a movie or a television show. And so it's really difficult to get the real shock and awe without actually shocking and awing people. And so, yeah, man, as a competitor, it just, the anxiety I get, it just drives me batty. Like, I do not like the unknown. I'm a very, like, I would probably be a villain if I was in the Marvel Universe because I very much like to have control, know what the future holds. I'm like kind of like a Dr. Doom, like, Reed Richards, I've thought one step ahead of you, like, if only you had the intellect to plan as far as I have, I'm that sort of guy. And so when you're on grocery games, you don't know the 3 games that are about to inflict carnage.
Yeah, I'm in Ashland, Oregon, and I don't know if you're familiar with it, but Melissa McMillan, she's won grocery games a few times. Actually has a restaurant here called Sandwich. And,
oh, yeah, I know her well. I think I judged one of her sandwiches, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, so I'm trying to get her on the phone to talk about her experience, but I haven't had too much luck yet. I just have to go down there and say I'll eat here every day for a week if you give me a 5-minute interview. No luck yet.
Well, tell her I'm on the interview too. That might work.
Yeah. So the judges switch seats a lot, thinking that we won't notice. No,
I get that question every now and then, and that's very, people are paying that much attention to the show. I'm envious of. I just don't have that attention span. But the idea is that there are actually 2 podiums. So if you look, there's a backdrop of like citrus and fruit that sits on the produce side, and then there's a backdrop that has the exit of the store. And so our seats reverse according to how we are shooting. So the person who's in the middle is always in the middle. But according to camera left and camera right, it looks like the people on the outside of the podium are switching positions. But there's always a person who is closest to Guy, and there is always a person who is farthest from Guy, and always a person in the middle. And if you look at it that way, based on the marks and the way they built the set, the positions actually do not change ever.
I definitely didn't notice that it's a different podium. I'm going to have to go back and pay attention next time. So how much on the show do we not see? You obviously have to cut 3 30-minute rounds in 40-ish minutes. Are there any potentially crucial moments that we're missing out on, or are we getting the really important parts of the meal preparation?
Think about it this way. It's actually even smaller than that because every action has to be narrated by the contestant, right? So as they're cutting their tomatoes, their head pops up and says, now I'm starting my tomatoes, right? So the actual action of cooking is cut down even further from that. You don't really miss anything crucial. If somebody cuts themselves and can be fixed without it causing a problem, that's not going to make the cut. We don't want to show people crashing and burning. We want to lift people up. And so if somebody makes a doofy mistake that they're able to correct, it doesn't really enhance their story, right? It would detract from their story and make them look doofy. This might be the biggest highlight of their life, and they still might not win. So we want everybody to feel good. What I generally say to contestants, if I can get a hold of them, sometimes I can't, is that, look, if you play a scratch-off lottery ticket, your odds of winning are generally 1 in 6. Here, your odds are 1 in 4. There are only 4 contestants. However, unlike the lottery ticket, the scratch-off rather, you have a direct ability to influence the odds. The better you cook, the better chance you have of winning. So ultimately what I'm saying here to them is that at the end of the day, don't beat yourself up if you didn't win. You simply had a 1 in 4 chance. The odds were still against you that you weren't going to win.
Yeah, absolutely. So the set of, we're just going to call it Triple G from now on because I'm sick of saying Guys Grocery Games. It's a working replica of an actual grocery store. Is every single item in there usable, or some of it kind of like store fill?
Only a few things. The baked goods are fill, and they're probably from, 2005. And then but they are real food. It's just they don't decay, so they stay there. And then the produce that you see directly behind the judges is not real, but everything else is totally usable. Nothing is fill.
Awesome. So in that case, what happens to the perishables in the store, like the proteins, dairies, produce? I'm sure it's not all used. Is it donated to a local food bank, or what's up with that?
Yeah, absolutely. That goes straight to a food bank. If the food bank takes it, it gets composted. It's easily the greenest it's easily the greenest set I've ever seen. And, it's not just green, it's actually helping people. And so I think that that's one of the most remarkable things about that show is, you know, seeing the people from the shelters come up every day and we load up their trucks with whatever, you know, could be king crab legs, damn it.
Okay. So do you have any embarrassing stories about one of the other judges or guys that you'd be willing to share with us?
Ooh, let me think. Well, once Carl Ruiz might have injured a contestant. That's all I can get into here. But, you know, generally, if you need a source of embarrassment from one of my fellow judges, consider Carl.
Yeah, definitely. Carl is definitely, I always think he's one of the funniest whenever he competes or judges. It's always going to be a fun time. Obviously, I do have a favorite, and I'm interviewing him, but that's a totally different story for another time.
Oh, shucks.
So, a memorable episode for me is when you teamed up with a youth who looked up to you as an idol. In your case, it was Palmer, and he ended up winning. Do you still keep in contact with him?
Yeah, I just got an email from Palmer today about shows that we're trying to pitch together. He is a brilliant mind, and if you saw recently, he reappeared on the show. He didn't win, but if you watch that show and you really kind of pay attention to the way he articulates, the way he thinks, the way he presents, the way he names his dish, he is a miniature restaurateur. I mean, he already thinks better than I would say most of the restaurateurs that I encounter. He just has a knack for this. He understands how to sell things, and that's what a lot of the show is about, like selling yourself, selling the dish, and selling your ability to do these things. You know, I'm sure you've seen it where somebody will come up and say, this is my blank, blank, blank with this, that, and that. Huzzah! You know, and they are proud of their dish. And then you have other chefs that will say, well, today I made for you with this and with that. And, you know, enthusiasm, like that's what a waiter does. The waiter gets you pumped to eat the food. The waiter makes you think that you've made the right decision. And that's why you have waiters. You're not ordering from some chef who's crafted this dish 350 times today and is over it, you know?
Yeah. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the series, you host a web series for Marvel called Eat the Universe, where you come up with dishes inspired by Marvel's pantheon of characters. What was the genesis for that show?
Actually, it's kind of unique. There was a guy who was working at Marvel whose wife worked at Food Network. One Food Network star, I think she said to him, hey, honey, I think he's a nerd. And he was like, yeah. So they reached out to me and said, do you want to come on a podcast at Marvel? I said, yeah, sure, of course. Like, dream come true. I used to write letters to Marvel as a kid, asking them to make real-life web shooters. Don't know where that letter went, but probably buried somewhere at home. Anyway, so heck yeah, well, dream come true. So I go to their office, and I'm just chucking and diving with them. And I'm like, hey, guys, like, if you ever want to make some food content, let me know. Like, pretty sure I can turn anybody into an edible dish. And I'm like, oh, really? Like, we'll see. And so they tried that concept out with a couple chefs, but I just kind of started, like, I just killed it. You know, like, I don't know how to better describe it. And just, you know, this show's in its second season, and I imagine there are more in the pipe. And it's just a way that I don't know if it's a gift or a power or my own mutant thing, but I just, I can see food and see characters in food. Maybe it's synesthesia. I don't know, man, but it doesn't come unnaturally to me. It rarely ever is work to create a dish inspired by a character. And so I think they saw that, and then we shot a couple little kind of, I don't know, proof of concept videos here and there, and then they were like, hey, let's try making this a full-fledged show. Let's get him a set. Let's get him some guests, and let's see what he does. And then, you know, episode 1 was a Phoenix and Cable hot chicken bowl. And that thing was connected on so many layers. When you have chicken and egg in the same bowl in Japan, they call that oidaka. It literally means like mother and child or family. And so Jean Grey and Cable, you know, Jean Grey is kind of this like stepmom to Cable, and in theory, depending on which branch of Marvel you're looking at. And so we made a dish that was not only delicious, not only should it have been created in advance, right? A hot chicken and egg and rice bowl, sign me up. But it also made sense to the characters. It was spicy, phoenixy chicken. You had the scion that then looked like this Cable glowing eye. And it worked. And then we made Venom pasta that looked like Venom's costume. And then it just keeps working and working and working and working. And, you know, we have fun with it. Sometimes it's a little bit of a stretch, but that's humor and that's fun. And so that's where it all started, man. And now it's really trucking. It's definitely my baby. I love that show.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there a character you haven't done yet that you would like to?
Pretty much anybody that I haven't done, I would like to do. I got some things in the work that I think are going to be tales to astonish. But yeah, man, I don't know. It's tough because like the deeper cut you go, the less the audience really knows about it. So it's kind of tough because, you know, there are the characters that are in movies, and that's what I would say, like, you know, the C-rank fans know about, and then there are characters that you would read about in the comic books, that's like B-rank, but then there are like the A and S-rank fans that want the crazy, weird stuff, the characters that only appeared in one, you know, brief comic book, you know, from 1966, and so on and so forth. So really, it's difficult, man, because I love them all, and the funny thing is that even if I'm assigned to work with a character that I don't really know so much about, Marvel provides me with plenty of source material. So I can dive into this world and kind of discover it fresh. And if it's not fresh, I discover it then from the perspective of chef and creator. And so it's kind of fun because I feel like these dishes actually get to flesh the character out a little bit more. And it's like I get to provide a little bit, it's not canon necessarily, but I get to provide a little bit of support to this character or these characters. And that's like a real honor, you know? Like when I grew up, I was drawing superheroes and had little books on how to draw little pencil frames, and, you know, the average superhero is eight times the size of their head, and now I'm not an artist by any means, but I still get to create, and I get to create within the Marvel Universe, and that makes my day.
Yeah, totally. Did you ever read the mini-series Worst X-Men Ever by Max Bemis?
No, I didn't. I'm sorry.
No problem. Just basically his power is he can explode in one time and then he's dead. Like, that's it. So he's like the worst X-Man ever. I definitely think there's a really fun dish in that where, like, I don't know how to, you're the professional here, but just like a dish that explodes and then it's done and over with. I don't know. I always thought it was really funny. That's his power. He explodes one time and then he's dead for forever.
Yeah, I mean, explosions are not something that I am incapable of. So, yeah. You know, all we got to do is get that. You know, if Marvel wants us to make the show about that, then by golly, we will. You know, explosions in food happen all the time. When you deep fry something, there are micro explosions as the liquid within whatever you're deep frying expands into a gas rapidly. That's an explosion. You know, you could say that anytime you have like a baking soda and acid reaction, that's a little explosion. Anything that is leavened deals with explosions, which is a rapid increase in volume. I don't know. That's what I look at, but who knows?
Yeah, and since is exploding and then it's just done and over with. It could be like if there was ever a series finale, that'd be a really fun way to do it. It's because it's just a one and done, and then that's the end of it. But I'm not going to do your show.
Luckily, the Marvel Universe keeps expanding in all directions, and even when the Marvel Universe contracts and thinks itself and folds in over itself, it creates more Marvel Universe. So I see no end in sight.
So you think with our society's obsession with food and comic books, there'd be a superhero revolving around food? Would you ever consider creating one yourself?
I actually did, and you can look it up with Todd Knock, an artist. We did a little show called Make Me a Hero, and that's on Marvel's YouTube. That was the very first test subject. And we created a hero called the Raging Chef. And so it's kind of like a combo of like Magneto and Hulk in that the chef only manifests his powers when he's cranky. And so his power, though, essentially is like electromagnetism in the sense of induction. So if you've ever seen an induction burner, it basically creates an electromagnetic field that then heats up a pot. And so my idea was, like, imagine if you could control the temperature of metals with your mind. And so that's pretty much it, you know, hot daggers, hot pans, using giant pans as shields, melting stuff with your mind, eventually getting so angry that his blood boils, and that's like when he goes Super Saiyan, and can melt other people.
A Super Saiyan reference from someone who's never seen an episode of Dragon Ball. I'm very happy with that.
Well, I know how to do my homework, man.
So, do you have any advice for people who want to learn how to cook as a self-taught chef yourself? Did you have any reading materials, or did you just learn as you went?
I kind of learned as I went. I always tell people that rather than going to culinary school and saying, I need to get schooled on this, volunteer your time at a restaurant and say, hey, look, I love your restaurant. I'm a huge fan. Can I pick herbs for you? Any place that's serving herbs that needs to be picked is probably a place where you could learn something. And no chefs like wasting their time picking herbs, yet it must be done. So it's not a waste. But having a person that's dedicated to doing that makes their lives tremendously easier. Then, as happens in all restaurants, somebody's going to call in sick, and they're going to look to the person who has demonstrated the most timeliness and ability to work without pay. And they will say, hey, you've been here looking at this, that, and the other, and picking herbs for us. Any chance you'd want to fill in for, Johnny the Lush in the Gold Manger or salad prep station? We'll show you how it's done. Boom. Then you start learning, and you stay with the company, or you use that experience to go to another restaurant, and you go and you go and you go. And that's what I would do. Of course, there are plenty of things available on the internet. Of course, you could watch Food Network. But in all reality, man, I would just say, kind of keep it a joy. The second you start cooking for a paycheck and you start hating what you create, you should probably stop, and you should take a break, and you should understand that maybe doing this professionally is not for you. I used to lose my mind when I would have to work the line because something that would be novel to me that I designed, a dish, for example, let's just say the foie gras donut, I love that thing, and I thought it was one of the greatest things I'd ever created. But when I had to make 1,000 in one day, I was like, dude, I hate this donut.
Yeah.
And so I'm very fortunate in that when I work for Marvel or when I work for Food Network, I generally create something once, and they capture that, and then it exists forever. And so I find a lot of joy in that. I find a lot of joy in even the difficulty of doing that. Sometimes we're tasked. For example, we did a thing with M&M's, and M&M's, an amazing sponsor for Eat the Universe. They wanted something that incorporates M&M's, but we wanted it to be something that was tasteful, And so we racked our brain, and we were bashing our heads against the wall, how can we incorporate M&M's? And they're kind of the star of the dish, given that the sponsor is M&M's, but also the dish is super viable. Holy moly. It should have been obvious. I was just beating myself up too much, trying to think of some creative thing, and it just came to us. And then that dish, I've had people emulate it and send me pictures. That's how you know you're doing something right, when people take it into their own hands.
I'm really upset because you just took my next question. It was about the M&M Infinity Gauntlet. So I'm going to just compose myself for a second. It's a storm of thunder, but that's okay. What would you consider to be your signature dish, and could you beat Bobby Flay if you were both making it?
Not really, man. I'll be honest with you, I don't really have a signature dish because I love everything that I create. And like I said, I don't want to create something so many times that I don't like it anymore. I don't want to play free bird.
Yeah.
But I'd be willing to throw down against Bobby any day of the week, and even he could pick the signature dish. It's fine. To lose to Bobby Flay is to win at life, right? You're not. Pretty much everyone loses to Bobby, so it's no big deal. And I'm not saying I'm as anywhere near. I've seen Bobby cook. I've done that show. I've eaten his food. Some of the most genius and brilliant dishes I've ever had have come from Bobby's kitchen. But I think just simply a throwdown of a staple dish like chicken and waffles or shrimp and grits or, stuff and turf. Sorry to give you all the ands and ands, but I think really just those things and being able to put my creative interpretation against Bobby's creative interpretation, it's
So you did hear it here first, folks. Justin Warner called out Bobby Flay and said he would throw down with him anytime. And if it does happen, I am taking full credit, and you can't stop me.
No problem. I don't know how big of a pop culture fan Bobby is. I don't know. I think he's more into like the Hamptons and horse racing. But hey, we're all our own nerds about our own things.
We'll just send this to him directly, this one little clip, and he'll be like, "Is that Justin? It's on."
You wouldn't be surprised.
Is there any food that you wish would get more of a spotlight in pop culture? And conversely, is there any food that you wish we'd see less of, not necessarily fast food?
I think like squid and octopus generally gets like a bad rap. I think squid is probably the number one food that we should all eat more of. Seems to be pretty darn abundant, and you know, it's pretty cheap. It's high in protein, low in fat. I don't know. I think squid, is pretty underserved. And generally when you see squid or octopus, it's used as like, it's like a gross out trope, you know, like, ew, octopus, or is my food still alive? You know, that kind of stuff bums me out. There was a video that was posted on Facebook recently where, I want to say it was a UK newspaper reported and shared it, that a chicken carcass was so alive that it jumped off the table at a restaurant. And I was like, my dude's like, that's a hot pot restaurant. That is not a chicken. That is a frog. And frogs are pretty easy to contain within inside a restaurant. You just need an aquarium or a trash can or anything. Hell, a wheelbarrow will do it as long as it's got a lid. And so it is pretty common to keep the frog live and then kill it there on the scene and spin it. And that to me is the ultimate impressionist. So like, a chicken walking off, you know, that's just playing on people's, like, doubt fears, you know. People are mortified of raw chicken. Like, I've eaten raw chicken. I don't recommend you do it all the time. I don't recommend you do it in America necessarily. But, like, there's really not much about food that is actually gross. What's gross to me is when you can't appreciate that things sustain us, or that an animal gave its life to sustain us. That's gross to me.
Yeah. All right, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. I do appreciate all the time you've given us so far. So I want to start moving away from food a little bit. What are some of your other nerdy interests? Are you more of a console gamer, a PC gamer? What do you prefer?
I play both. I would say equally. When I'm on the road, you know, I don't bring my PC with me, but I carry my Switch with me. In my RV, as I was touring across the country, I had 2 Switches, 2 PS4s, a gaming PC, and a couple tablets and laptops. Like, I pretty much can't be without games. It's just my life. Like, I was kind of explaining to my gal the other day that, like, my default mode is play video games, right?
Yeah.
To cook is not my default by any means. To eat, maybe that's default number 2. But there have definitely been times where, like, I'm playing a game in siege mode and, like, I forget to eat, and it's just not happening. Like, when I'm on set, generally I get being on set is all about, like, energy regulation. So, like, you can't over-caffeinate, you can't under-caffeinate, you can't overeat, you can't undereat. And then when I'm on grocery games, I'm eating or sampling 9 plates of food by the end of the day. And so when I get done with all of that and I'm done trying to, like, blast through a camera, through cable, through your TV into your living room, when I'm done expending that energy, I pretty much just want to, like, unwind, you know, and I do that via video games.
Yeah, we'll have to throw in on some Smash sometimes.
Who do you main, bro?
Kirby, for sure.
Oh, yeah? I pick... Oh, nice. I love Greninja. I pick random every time just to show my finesse and skill. I play Smash Brothers not to win, but to humiliate, to embarrass, and for, like, high-flying maneuvers. I could care less about who wins. All I care about is how good I look doing it. And so I start by picking random. But if I had to die with one character and only play Smash as one character for the rest of my life, it would definitely be Mr. G and Dubs.
Okay. Maybe I don't want to play with you then. The one character I hate playing against is Wii Fit Trainer. Like, if I have to play against Wii Fit Trainer, I'm like, oh my gosh, this isn't even going to be fun for me.
What, you don't like saluting the sun?
I don't like getting smashed. They have really good rebound against Kirby, and I don't like it.
Sorry, my dude.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll move on from it. Who would you say your favorite Pokemon is?
It's tough, man. I got the Pokemon that like stole my heart first was like Meryl, and then the Pokemon that I think I like the most in terms of like aesthetic and overall evolution to design is probably Abracadabra Alakazam. Simply because of spoons, and like he's a 151, and I also like think I would probably be a psychic type if I had to be a Pokemon type. Like it definitely wouldn't be one of the elements. It definitely wouldn't be Ghost, Dark, or Dragon. Certainly not Fairy. So like, not Poison. Maybe Bug. Some people could argue Bug. Not Steel. Not Fighting. Psychic.
Yeah.
And it's got spoons. I like spoons.
Mine is kind of it's a 151. But it's in Alolan form. I like Alola Raichu, so he's flying and psychic and electric all packed into one, and he looks cool.
Yeah, not to mention he swags and surfs.
Yeah, it was right on for a long time, but then Alola Raichu came out. I'm like, I have a new favorite.
I dig it.
So, what is the secret to the perfect pompadour?
I use the hairdryer. I'm one of the few dudes I know who do. I also don't get clippers used on me, short of trimming around the ear, sideburn, back of the neck. I do an entire scissors cut. And if you walk into a place and they say like, all right, kid, what's your number? You quietly walk away. That's where you go to get your like hair cut, not your hair done. Big difference.
Number as in like on a razor.
Oh, yeah. It was like, 3 on top, 2 in the back.
Yeah, okay. So you just signed a multi-album deal with Flavor Town Records. What is the name of the big royalty?
That's a good question. I actually got my start in showbiz by rapping about wine. Yeah, it's kind of like the backstory. I just knew that I could perform, so I'd write these rap songs about wine. They're on YouTube if you dig hard enough. And they look good if you're like a huge winophile, but like if you're not into wine, it will make no sense to you. But anyway, it'd probably be let's think of a good. I'm trying to think of it. It would be Nape Consistency.
Okay.
Are you familiar with Nape Consistency?
No, I'm going to have to, you can explain it to us though, that'd be fun.
Yeah, Nape, man, that's a French term for thickness, a texture. So if you were to dip a spoon in something and you could run your finger across the spoon and the spoon would come clean, yet where you did not touch the spoon, the sauce were to adhere, that is called Nape Consistency. So think about if you stuck the spoon in heavy cream versus in water, right? Heavy cream is going to stick to the spoon. You stick it in water, it's not going to stick to the spoon. And so that's what that's what they call Nape Consistency. And for me, I also like the idea of forming a Nappy Roots cover band called Nape Roots.
Oh, that would be awesome. So, if you were a Microsoft Office program, what program would you be?
Word. Hands down.
Word. I feel like.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not a numbers guy. I hate numbers. I just had to do my taxes today, and that was horrible. I'm not into like PowerPoint. I would rather give a rousing discussion without visual aid. What else is there? I know there's some other things, but those are like the big three, right?
Yeah, those are the ones that I cared about. They can't revoke your high school diploma years after the fact, can they?
I don't think so. I barely got mine in the first place.
I cheated my way through Excel. It is my least favorite program in the entire planet. So, if anyone's listening, I didn't cheat. I got it all by myself.
Excel, a program of squares designed by squares for squares.
Exactly. So, what is your favorite kind of cheese?
Cheese. Oh man, I've gone off the deep end. When I was working at the Modern in MoMA in New York, we had a cheese art that often had 30 plus selections, and it ain't cheddar. Let's just say that. I would have to say maybe. Oh God, there's so many that I love. Any sort of aged Gouda or Gouda, if you're not in the speaking the language, I would get behind. There's a cheese called Grayson that I want to say is out of Virginia. I really like anything that Cowgirl Creamery does. I like Truffle Tremor and Humboldt Fog. I like any sort of quark or fresh cheese is great. If I had to pick a blue, probably be Queso de Vallejon. I want to say that's wrapped in chestnut leaves. Super blue. Like, that thing will fight you. It'll like, fight back. Yeah, man, I think it's difficult, man. I'm not a very favorites-oriented person because, to me, it's about context. A slice of American in your underwear at 2 in the morning, that rules. Eating some mummified cloth-bound cheddar in the countryside in England also rules.
Got to have some 30-year aged cheddar when I was in England, 10 years ago.
Let me guess, it rules. Yeah, dude. You know what I mean? Context is the key.
Have you ever had Road Creamery Blue? It's, we have the famous Road Creamery here, and they're smoked.
Yeah, most definitely, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's named after the river.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're 15 minutes on the road river, so their creamery, we go there all the time.
Dig it. I'm jealous.
Yeah, I'll have to send you some time. Have you ever had Old Croc from Australia?
No, not yet.
It's aged white cheddar, and it's obviously Australian. It's so good. I know cheddar's not your favorite, but you definitely need to try it because it packs a punch.
I'll add it to my list.
All right, so Justin Warner, 10 years from now, what are you doing? Where are you?
Oh, I ask myself that question a lot. Certainly, I don't really like thinking about the future or even the past. I like thinking about what I got to get done. Period. Waiting tables, cooking. It's just Tetris, man. You just try to get rid of the damn bricks and get to the next level. So it's probably more of that. I don't know. I know where I need to fill in some holes in my food repertoire and knowledge of gastronomy, but I don't know that I want to actively pursue those. I want some wonder and enjoyment to be left in that world for me to discover as I carry on. Like I said, I've been in food since I was 15, but I've really only been cooking for 5, 6, 7. I don't know. I don't even keep track of time. That's how little I actually focus on it. Yeah. But I still want there to be wonder in this thing that I love, and I don't want to even come close to conquering it because I love the discovery. And you can't discover something twice. You can rediscover it, but then you're just rekindling. But I would also like to kind of move into other sectors. I'm coming up on my second cookbook. Have some ideas for third and fourth. So I really enjoy writing. I enjoy all aspects of creation. I just got a complete in-box Mario Paint. Maybe I'm going to make a Mario Paint TV show.
That'd be fun. Yeah,
dude, compose my own music for it, it'd be incredibly difficult and time-consuming, but I think it would be worth it. 10 years, I don't know. Maybe I'll run for office. I don't know. As I toured the country in the RV the past year, obviously I spent most of my time not on the coast because there are only 2 coasts. Well, 3 if you count the Gulf of Mexico, which I was there as well. And I found that there are a lot of stories that aren't really being told or being told as loudly as they could be. And I found that everywhere I went, even though I was this recovering, New Yorker, I seemed to get along well with pretty much everyone. That could be because I'm, trained in PR and navigation of social situations, and I've received media training from Food Network to handle interviews without saying something ridiculous. But mostly I think that, food is such an incredible unifier, and that I think there's, the reason that we overuse the expression break bread, I think there's a lot of truth in it. And so maybe I'll run for office. I don't know.
Mayor of Flavortown?
No. There's only one mayor of Flavortown, and it's a somewhat totalitarian regime. It cannot be toppled. I would go for city council or alderman of Flavortown, maybe registrar of wills.
Okay. Second in command, just not the top honcho.
No, I wouldn't even go second in command, man. I'm a much better character actor than I am a main character. It's just who I am, I do better on the sidelines. I don't know why, but sure, I like to exist.
I'm writing a book called Tertiary Characters, and it's all about the people that we meet once in our life and how they have an influence on us.
I like that.
And, yeah, I'm about halfway through with it. It's just a lot of short stories about the person you sit next to on an airplane and how you might say something to them that radically changes their life, but you'll never see them again. So just stuff like that. It should be pretty fun when I get it done with.
Oh, I'll have to check it out. Sounds great.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll shoot you over a copy if I ever get it finished. So what would we find on your iPod that would surprise us the most?
Deep, dirty London electroclash. Pretty heavy southern U.S. trap. A lot of 60s music I really love. I listen to the 60s on 6. Shout out Flash Phelps, my favorite DJ, on Sirius XM. I really love
shouted
that.
Out XM show on an FM radio show.
Sorry, my dude. Times of today are changing.
No, it's okay. That's totally fine. We'll just edit that part out. No, 60s on 6 is great. 90s on 9. I'm not a huge fan of 80s on 8, but it seems like they just play the same stuff over and over again anyway.
Yeah, I think both of those channels I think the great thing about all of those channels is that they kind of capture the spirit and are indicative of the era. And I think 80s and 90s, there's a lot of regurgitation going on. I find that, you're less likely to get this crazy beat cut that just blows your mind. But sometimes I'll hear a cover, or a B-side of a 45 on 60s on 6, and it's whoa, what was that? This is wild.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, hold on one second. Sorry, I'm on an interview.
What's up?
No, go ahead. Edit that out.
It is the end of the world, and you're teamed up with 3 other guys, Rush Games judges, to survive a zombie takeover. Who do you pick?
3 other Grocery Games judges. Artie Sakura is definitely up there. She's easily one of my best friends in the food biz. Oh man, I just feel like the universe isn't complete without Carl. And Carl is, I have yet to decide if Carl is the force of creation or destruction, but I don't care. My universe needs it.
Yeah, absolutely. So Artie, Carl, and who's number 3?
Oh, no, I get a third? All right, great. I gotta say, oh man, everybody's my friend. I feel like I'm gonna offend somebody. Maybe Jet Tila, man. Jet's a world record holder. Every universe needs its strongman. I feel like Jet does things. Jet is very logical in the way he approaches things, and from what I see of Jet, Jet's done a ton of creative things. But if you say, Jet, I would like pad thai, he will make you the absolute greatest, 10th edition, pad thai that is perfect. And there's something that I enjoy about that. Somebody who can deliver, You say, Jet, build me a car. He will build you a car. You say, Jet, I need a rocket. He would give you a rocket. He's just very multifaceted and kind of a perfectionist without being fussy.
Yeah. So mine would be Justin Warner, Artie, and Bomac.
Oh, I like Bomac too. That's a good choice.
All right, so final question, and this is probably the hardest one out of the whole interview, and I hope you're ready for it. I saved this one for last for a reason, because if you have the wrong answer, I'm probably just going to hang up on you. Does pineapple belong on pizza?
You know, the way you phrase that, belong, the answer is no. Nothing belongs on pizza. But can pineapple be put? Can pineapple exist on pizza? Yes. Anything can exist on pizza.
Okay. You have the best answer I've ever gotten for that, because I've worded it in such a way that I don't want a straight answer, and you didn't give me one, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, you know, I don't know. Like, I know people love it. So if they love it, great. Like, rather than fighting about pizza, like, let's figure something else out.
Yeah. All right. Well, I do want to thank our guest, Justin Warner, for taking the time to speak with us today. I know you have a very busy schedule. You're about to jet off to Japan for a month. He didn't invite me, guys. I'm really upset about it, but I'll kind of get over it. Do you have any final words for our audience today?
No, just thanks for your time and listening to me ramble.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we are pleased to talk with Josh Halstead, another podcaster and part of the Faceless Empire family, about his podcast and other fun topics. Here we go. So we're here with my special guest, Joshua Halstead. Josh is my producer, and he's also the host of Spot Culture, awfully close to ComiCulture, but that's what we're going for here at the Faceless Empire family. How you doing today, Josh?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm doing good. So what I want to talk to you about, if you and I are both really into like horror and a really specific subset of horror, gore and like splatter, why do you think there's such a attractiveness to horror movies?
Yeah, I mean, so I could quite honestly write a whole book about it. In fact, I kind of want to at some point. But there's sort of three main things for me. But some of it can be broken down like Stephen King has this great quote where he says that horror is partially an exercise in allowing the most twisted part of you to go for a walk in a safe way. And I think to an extent that's true, where especially allowing your most antisocial tendencies and these sort of bad thoughts and fears and things like that in your mind to go for a walk while knowing you're in a safe place and that nobody's really getting hurt. So I definitely think that plays a part in it. I also think horror is a way for people, for instance, like me, who have very severe anxiety, to be able to experience that anxiety in a safe setting, process through that. And then especially with slashers and splatter films, usually somebody comes out the other end at the end of the movie. Somebody survives. And so it ends on a hopeful note that you can go through that anxiety and that pain and whatever is coming at you, you can get through it. And I think that is a huge draw for horror as well. And that's all sort of deeper psychological stuff. It's aside from just in general, most horror, especially haunting horror and stuff like that, has a lot of influence from German Expressionism from the 1920s and 30s, which is visually gorgeous, and the soundtracks are very visceral, and practical effects that are gorgeous and a beautiful art form of their own with guys like Tom Savini and Greg Nicotero. So I think there's a lot of facets of that, but those are the ones that kind of immediately pop in my brain.
Yeah, I completely agree. Horror is it's a way to escape. There's something satisfying about watching someone else decimate someone with a machete. Just knowing that I could never muster the courage to do it myself, but kind of just seeing it play out. That might sound sadistic, but I promise you I'll have no interest in hitting and slashing anyone with a machete. Just seeing it done on screen is just really cool.
That primal curiosity.
Yeah. So that's what it would feel like, but definitely no urge to carry it out. So what would you say your top 5 horror movies are? Any genre, any era, just overall. Which ones can you go back to every time?
Gosh, that's such a hard question. The Exorcist definitely has to be in there. director's cut specifically, just absolutely astonishing every time. And possession films aren't necessarily my favorites in general, but The Exorcist is just so masterfully done, and also is really psychological and digs deep into religion in a way that's respectful but also challenging and interesting. So Exorcist would be in there. The original Evil Dead, I love Sam Raimi. I think he's a genius, and the original Evil Dead is just mind-blowing, and I think holds up in a way that it really shouldn't, given how cheesy some of the effects and the acting are, and yet it still holds up. And I have friends that have watched that and been like, that just terrified me. That, you know, and to me, like, if you can have a film with cheesy acting and cheesy effects that still terrifies people 35 years later, you know, that definitely says something about that film. So Exorcist, Evil Dead, I would say Carpenter's original Halloween would have to be in there, my favorite slasher of all time. Carpenter, just such a genius in that film, just drew so heavily from Psycho, which is just unbelievable. I would say in the realm of Hitchcock, it's horror adjacent, I guess, so I'm going to throw it in there. Hitchcock's Rear Window is unbelievable and masterful, my favorite Hitchcock film. And then I think for the last one, I would throw in House on Haunted Hill, the original Vincent Price. The first film I ever saw that terrified me. Growing up, I wasn't allowed to watch any horror past about 1970, but my dad used to show us these old ones, and so I remember being like 6 or 7, and he, on a family movie night, showed us House on Haunted Hill, and it was the most realistic horror I'd ever seen, and it just legitimately terrified me. It's the first time I remember, like, knowing that being scared can be fun, and tapping into that.
Yeah, all the older horror movies are definitely a treat because they're not necessarily terrifying, but at the same time, there's a level to them that, like, you just can't do today. Like, if I saw a remake of The Toxic Avenger today, I'd probably hate it. Only because you can't really replicate something that was made so long ago so perfectly, you know?
Yeah, which they're actually doing a Toxic Avenger remake. Kaufman's doing a high budget one. Like he's producing a high budget Toxic Avenger remake for, I want to say Legendary. Hopefully it's not the PG-13 one that they were talking about before.
If he's involved, it's different. But and he's talking about Lloyd Kaufman, owner and creator of Choma Films, for those who are uninitiated. But there's something about these movies that they elicit such emotion. Like, I don't get scared that often. And I think movies keep me in check because I'd kind of become fearless, I think, if I didn't have a way to be scared. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's something, horror can be visceral in a way I don't think any other genre can be. And for me, I don't get scared very easily, but I do get affected by films. And so for me, something like A Midsommar, which I thought was genius, genuinely unsettled me and, like, drove into my psyche. And that's not something that happens very often. And so I found Midsommar, like, really rewarding to watch, or Darren Aronofsky's Mother from a couple years ago. And so modern horror dives in sort of that way. And I think at the same time, there's maybe nothing more unsettling than 8-year-old Michael Myers' face in the opening scene of 1978 Halloween. It keeps you in check, and it's also so visceral in a really interesting way. I don't think any other genre has the capability of being.
Yeah, you mentioned Michael Myers' face, but the one that sticks out for me the most, and it's actually a PG-13, is The Ring. The Ring was really my first introduction into quote-unquote horror. And I remember the scene where that girl is in the closet and her face is all disfigured, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, that's real. Like, that is messed up.
Oh, it's so good.
I mean, nothing against PG-13 horror movies. They're not necessarily as good, but that one was like, that sticks in my brain. And I was like, gosh, that's when I realized that these could, like, scar you if you're not mentally prepared to watch them. And I think that's a really interesting thing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there to go a little bit more recent in my life, because most of the time when I talk about films that genuinely scared me, it's when I was a little kid, because I'm just not going to use a scare. But right after I turned 18, because I wasn't allowed to watch any, more recent horror till then, my parents went out of town, and I was like, oh, I'm allowed to watch whatever now. I'll start watching horror. And I watched the first slashers I watched, aside from the Scream trilogy, which only sort of counts. I, in one night, just abandoned in this giant house, I watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Friday the 13th, and Nightmare on Elm Street, having never seen a slasher before, or like any horror movies after like 1970. And I didn't sleep for like 3 days.
Yeah, dude, it's so funny. We also have a fascination, not just you and I, but everyone, with comedic horror, like slapstick, gory, over the top. Like, why do you think we get an even more deeper appreciation out of? Is it because it's making fun of itself that we're just like, okay, this isn't as serious as we think it is?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, and I think it depends on the film, because Get Out is horror comedy, but it uses the comedy for social satire. But then there's stuff like Scream, or even to somewhat lesser extent, Scary Movie, that is about realizing that we might love this thing, but that doesn't mean it's always the most intelligent or the most artistic, right? It's removing pretension from it a little bit and allowing us to laugh at ourselves and our own loves and the things that we love. And I think that's super appealing. That's why, even in the superhero genre, you get stuff like Deadpool and Shazam that we love because they're poking fun at the things we love and reminding us that it is kind of silly.
I think the perfect example of great comedic horror movies are like anything Trauma, which is like my personal favorite. I know it's probably one of yours as well, but like we always end up talking about this, but the first Trauma movie I ever saw was Terror Firma, which is funny because it's a horror movie about the making of a horror movie. And it's just really interesting that these films can introduce our love to them, even though they're making fun of themselves,
Yeah, I adore Trauma, and the ones for me, like I enjoyed Terror Firma a lot. I personally, Toxic Avenger and Class of Nickel High are two of my favorite movies of all time, and both of those are films that kind of very intentionally point attention to the fact that they're low budget and that they are schlocky and that they're kind of, they break the fourth wall a little bit and they're teasing themselves as they're being made. And so as you're watching it, you're constantly reminded that this was made by a bunch of guys who just love horror and love comedy and wanted to make this thing. And it gives you that feeling like you're part of the in-crowd hanging out with your friends, which is why I think Evil Dead is lasting so long. It's not Trauma, but Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 were a bunch of dudes that were friends that went into the woods and shot a film together. And you watch the behind the scenes, and they're just like, we thought this effect would be kind of cool, so we figured out a way to do it. And so that style for these low-budget, schlocky horror films makes you feel like you're a part of that group, a part of that in-crowd. And I think we all want to feel like we fit in.
And then there's the horror movies that generally try to be scary, but they're so terrible that you have to love them anyway. Perfect example is Blood Diner. You and I and Michael watched it the other day, and we actually did a commentary for it. What a crazy ride. I mean, because it really tried, but it was like so over the top and so B that it was almost A, if that makes sense. Just it almost seemed like they were doing it on purpose, but I truly feel like they were trying to actually make a scary movie.
Oh, they absolutely were. That's what I love, and that's what we do over on, I guess, free plugs here. We have a podcast that Kevin and I and the other producer of the show, Michael, my brother, do called What the Schlock, and the first episode's up. It's Blood Diner. But it's part of the fun of that is watching these terrible movies that were trying generally to be good. Some of, like Mutilator is one of my favorites of those. The Mutilator was meant as a serious horror film, but it also starts with like a bunch of college students in the cheapest sunglasses ever driving through town in a convertible while an 80s pop song plays. And then freeze frames to show the title. Like, it's like those films, I think, have the fun of sitting there making fun of them. If you watch those by yourself, it's not as fun as, you know, cracking open a beer with a friend and watching it and teasing it. And you get to see cheesier effects. And it makes you appreciate the effects you see in films like Day of the Dead, where Tom Savini did the effects, because you realize people tried to do effects like that and they failed.
Yeah.
So this is hard to do, and this is an achievement in an art form.
You're going to have to listen to the whole commentary to understand this, but there's a part of Blood Diner where the quote-unquote body is quite literally and quite visibly a plastic mannequin. And there's just like, you couldn't have like put a little green screen over like where the arms are supposed to be severed off and like did something about that, like just a little bit, but they're very obviously mannequins. And I was like, okay, like I get you had a low budget, but this is kind of like, come on.
Yeah, I mean, apparently Blood Diner was picked up for a little bit by Troma, but it wasn't made by Troma. It was made to be a serious horror film, and then people saw it and went, it's not a serious horror film. And so it became like, oh, it's a schlocky classic. But if you're watching it, I mean, it feels lower budget than most Troma films, which is saying something. I mean, watching it was like watching Terra Firma almost, like quality-wise, except that Terra Firma is supposed to look that way.
Yeah, Terra Firma. I watched it at the wrong age, man, because it messes me up. I love it. It's one of my favorite movies. But there's a scene where you know what I'm talking about, with an escalator, and I'm like, if you're not prepared and you don't know what's happening, it's gonna mess you up. Because I have a deep-rooted psychological fear of escalators now. Like, I have to step on them carefully. I have to step off them carefully. It's a whole thing. So, speaking of movies that tried to be good but were so terrible, but ended up being good because of how terrible they were, it's not necessarily a horror movie, but what about The Room? I mean, we got to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, The Room, I think, feeds into the same idea. There's a humor in seeing people, this sounds horrible at first, but there's a humor in seeing people fail at something when they genuinely try it. And I think at least some extent of that is that we are all scared to try to do things, especially artistic things, because what if we fail? And so I think it removes the sting a little bit out of our own failures in our lives and our creative lives when we are able to collectively kind of laugh about the fact that somebody made this terrible film, and it doesn't mean that person was a bad person, doesn't mean that art is worthless, it means they made a bad film. Tommy Wiseau is treasured as a human being and as a filmmaker, but he also made The Room. Like, we love him because of who he is and because he made The Room, even though it's terrible. And so I think it takes that sting out of our own failures and allows us to communally kind of agree that failure doesn't make you a failure. It makes the thing you made a failure.
Yeah, he's a national treasure. He's so interesting. No one knows roughly how old he is. No one knows exactly where he's from or how he made his money. And yet he financed this movie that ended up having like, I think a $6 million budget and made $1,800 at the box office because he paid for it himself to be there. And it's just that's insane. That's dedication.
Yeah, well, I think ironically, some bad art can breed some great art, right? So The Room bred then James Franco's The Disaster Artist, and all Ed Wood's terrible films bred the Ed Wood movie with Johnny Depp that Tim Burton made. And so even bad art can breed great art. And you even look, especially within the horror genre, to just wheel it back around, because segues are weird. Those terrible, cheesy, schlocky horror movies that we laugh at were also the films that guys like Adam Green and Eli Roth and Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez were watching growing up that made them fall in love with genre, and it led to us getting some great art down the line. because without those terrible schlocky movies, we don't get Hostel and Green Inferno. We don't get Hatchet and Frozen, the horror movie, not the musical. We don't get From Dusk Till Dawn. We probably don't even get any of Tarantino's work. And so I think that there is an actual importance to those films, is that even if they're schlocky and goofy and silly, they can inspire legitimately great art.
I totally agree with you. It's just so interesting how these things, it doesn't take a lot of effort to make something great. And on the same end, you could use so much effort and make something so terrible. The thing about The Room is it's made its money back, like, a lot, because they still have showings. Like, he did it. Like, I don't know what exactly he did, but he did it because people still go to the theater to watch midnight screenings of The Room, and it's just the craziest thing. Like, why in particular is that movie so standoutish? Like, why do we go and say, I want to watch The Room? I can't watch The Room by myself. I have to be with other people. Otherwise, I will just turn it off. It's just too much for me to handle by myself, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I had come up with a theory on it that's super pretentious and boring, so I won't go into it in detail. But I come up with a theory on it that The Room is actually a masterpiece and everyone misunderstands it. And the basic idea is that The Room is absurd not because Wiseau doesn't want to make films, but because he was making a film about the absurdity of life and human interaction and about our deep-seated social anxieties.
And then leave it to Franco to perfect it.
Yeah, exactly.
There's I don't know if you've seen it, the Comedy Central roast of James Franco, where they just poke fun at him like the entire time. And his final statement was like, this isn't a roast, this is my grand masterpiece. And I was like, yeah, man, like that's totally, I could see Tommy actually knowing the thing was going to be terrible, but just the pure shock value of it was going to be enough for people to like be interested in it.
Yeah, absolutely. That roast was really, really good. I was surprised by how well, particularly Seth Rogen did in that.
Yeah, Seth Rogen, he's definitely, he's not given as much credit, I think, as he deserves. I mean, he's obviously insanely famous for being funny, but I don't think he gets enough credit for how smart he is. Like, if you really think about his humor, there's a deeper level to it than I think people give him credit for. He kind of gets stuck with that whole stoner thing, but there's more to him than that. And if you watch the roast, you can definitely see, like, this guy has real talent.
Oh yeah, he's absolutely fantastic, and I think him and really that whole gang of people, the guys that grew up with Apatow in the early thousands, have really, really evolved comedy. Because in the 90s and even the early thousands, a lot of adult comedies were just teen comedies for adults. It was, here's a bunch of stupid sex jokes and two-dimensional characters. And what they did was they met people in the middle and went, we'll make those sex jokes for you, but we're also going to deliver a actual emotional, powerful story. In the case of stuff like Knocked Up and Mrs. 40 and 50-50 and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and another good one is, did you see Apatow's series Love?
Yes, I love that series.
What a masterpiece. We've really gone off from away from horror, but that's totally fine. That whole series, and it ended after 3 seasons, but I think that if it would have gone any further, it would have started to go downhill because it's a finite story, and I think they ended it exactly where it needed to.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had no idea who Paul Rust was going into it. I didn't even realize Apatow made it when I put on the first episode. I literally just saw that it had the girl from Community, and I was like, I'll watch this. And it was not at all what I was expecting, and it was just so brilliant.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I knew Paul Rust from before was that really terrible I Love You, Beth Cooper movie. There's a scene where Beth Cooper's boyfriend like breaks into his house and like threatens to kill him. I'm like, dude, just call the cops. Like, this dude broke into your house. It was so funny. But
I think Michael owns that.
Oh gosh. Oh man, yeah, love Apatow. They're all geniuses. Anything he's involved in, I'm gonna watch. 99% of it, I'm probably gonna enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, even when he works with people I don't generally love, I think we disagree on this one, but, I'm not a big Amy Schumer fan at all, but I really liked the movie he did with her, Trainwreck. I think partially because I'm a huge Bill Hader fan, so it carried the movie a little bit for me. But even that, I didn't see it in theaters because I was like, I really don't find it funny, and I watched it on Blu-ray, and I was like, oh, this is actually a pretty good Apatow film.
Wasn't John Cena supposed to be in that? I didn't see him at all.
Oh yeah, he's in it for. I think he dates Amy Schumer in it for 2 scenes.
Really?
I
didn't see him.
Yeah, it was just a little tiny thing. He was.
Gosh, I'm gonna need you to Google. I don't see John Cena. You can't see me because I just had a whole awesome joke and you blew it by taking it seriously. So thank you.
Oh, I get the joke now.
Dang.
I forgot about that. I totally forgot about that meme. I'm not hip with the jive, I believe is how the kids say it.
That's such an old meme, it's not even hip at this point.
I don't know any memes for the most part. I remember Overly Attached Girlfriend.
Dude, the OG. Not the OG. One of the OGs.
My online interneting is basically studying movies. That's all.
Grumpy Cat?
I know Grumpy Cat. I was sad when Grumpy Cat died. But I know Grumpy Cat because of Grumpy Cat's Christmas.
A movie.
Lifetime movie.
Yeah. A Lifetime movie starring Aubrey Plaza.
That movie was so much fun. I'm not even slightly ashamed to say I like that movie. We might have tangented off of horror a little bit.
Yeah, and we do gotta kind of have to wrap things up a little bit. We're going on 30 minutes, but you're gonna be back on all the time, and I'll be on your podcast. If you had any final words for the ComiCulture crew, what would it be?
You know what? This has nothing to do with comics, but I'm going to borrow from John Green for this. Now more than ever, watch Harvey.
Yeah. And just because it's comic culture doesn't mean it's all comic books. When's the last time a Comic-Con was strictly about comics, to be fair? I mean, it's a huge part of it still, but, I'm not going there to get my Spider-Man #1 graded, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks so much for having me, man.
Yeah, it was super fun, and, like he said, I'm on his podcast with the Schlock. We talked about Blood Diner, and we're doing it, once a month?
Yeah, once a month.
Yeah. And what's the next movie? Do we know yet?
We don't. You said you wanted to pick, so I'm waiting for you to pick.
Oh, I thought it was okay. I thought it was next month. I'll pick this month though. No worries. All right, man. Have a great rest of your night. Thank you so much for speaking with me.
Yeah, absolutely. You as well.
All right. Bye.